Commander Elias Ward stood at the wide glass of Station Halcyon's observation deck, watching the dead star that burned weakly below. The light was faint, flickering, like the last breath of a candle about to go out. For 3 nights, the listening posts had brought him nothing but strange ghost signals. Sometimes they came like whispers, broken words, fragments of voices cut by static. Other times, they came sharp and sudden, screams that ended in silence. He had replayed the last message 100 times. A human woman's voice, full of terror, breaking through the static, one single word. Burning. Then silence. No coordinates, no names, no call sign. Just that one word echoing in the cold void. Some of the aliens who traded at Halcyon dismissed it. They told him it was only interference, a solar flare, a meaningless distortion. Humans are always dramatic, one reptilian trader hissed with a smile that was almost mocking. Elias said nothing in reply, but his hands had clenched behind his back until the bones hurt. He knew it was no accident. He knew it was real. Station Halcyon was more than a trade post. It was the last human outpost before the border of the Drax Imperium, an empire that had always sneered at humanity's spread through the stars. The Drax had warned before, pull back, stay within your solar system, or face the consequences. Humanity had ignored them, just as Elias believed they should. But now, staring at the faint light of the dying star, he feared the consequences had already arrived. The silence from Colony Ardent was not normal. A world of 100,000 souls did not just go quiet. Their beacons never failed. Their ships never stopped transmitting. It was as if they had been cut out of existence, erased with one brutal stroke. A soft chime rang behind him. Lieutenant Kara Wren, young, sharp-eyed, stepped into the deck. "Commander," she said, her voice low, "we've got something." Long-range sweep just picked it up. Elias turned. He could see her shoulders were stiff. She handed him the data pad. On it, the sensor readings scrolled in long columns of numbers. His eyes were trained enough to know what he was seeing before she even explained. "Unidentified warships," Kara whispered. "Dozens of them. No known transponder codes. Moving on a direct path through the rim." His chest felt heavy. "Drax," he muttered. The word tasted bitter. Kara hesitated. "They're cloaking their emissions, but not well. It looks like they want us to know they're there." Elias nodded. It was a message, a cruel one. He had seen predators in the wild when he was a boy on Earth. Wolves would sometimes circle their prey before striking, letting the animal smell their breath, hear their paws, to flood it with fear before the kill. The Drax were circling. Down below, the trade ring of Halcyon still bustled. Civilian freighters docked and undocked. Aliens walked the markets, selling crystals, machines, and rare foods from across the stars. None of them knew the shadow drawing near. None of them had heard the voice crying, "Burning." Elias clenched the datapad. He thought of the colony children, the ones born under Ardent's twin sons, who had never seen Earth, who grew up believing the stars belonged to them too. Were they all gone? Were their homes ash and glass now? He felt Kara's eyes on him. "Sir, should we send a report to Earth Command?" He wanted to say yes, but he knew the truth. Earth was months away, their fleet still spread thin across a dozen fragile colonies. By the time a response arrived, Halcyon might already be nothing but debris. "We hold," Elias said finally. His voice was calm, steady, though his heart pounded. "We watch, and we prepare." He turned back toward the window. The dead star's light was faint, but in the darkness around it, something else glimmered. Pinpricks of energy, growing stronger. He knew what it meant. The fleet was closer now. For a long moment, neither he nor Kara spoke. The silence pressed in, heavy as the void outside. Then the alert chime broke through, sharp and urgent. A voice from the control deck came through the comm. "Commander, we've intercepted a pod. It's human." Elias's pulse raced. "Bring it in." Minutes later, in the docking bay, he stood as the pod was pulled inside. The shell was scorched black, full of claw marks like something had tried to tear it open. When the hatch hissed, a hiss of foul smoke spilled into the air. Medics rushed forward. Inside, a man lay strapped to the chair, his skin pale, his breathing shallow. His eyes fluttered open as Elias knelt beside him. Blood trailed from his lips, but he forced out words with desperate effort. They burned everything, he rasped. The skies turned red. Children screaming. No escape. His hand gripped Elias's sleeve with surprising strength. They're coming for you next. His eyes rolled back, and the medics pulled him onto a stretcher. Elias stood frozen, the words echoing in his mind. Coming for you next. Somewhere beyond the dying star, unseen in the darkness, the Drax fleet crept closer, and Halcyon was alone. The survivors' words echoed in Commander Elias Ward's mind long after the medics carried the man away. They're coming for you next. The docking bay still smelled of burned metal and smoke from the escape pod, and the sound of the station's life support pumps felt too loud in the silence that followed. Elias stood alone for a moment, gripping the railing, his jaw tight. He had been a soldier long enough to know when a warning was not just panic or exaggeration. This was truth. He walked back through the station's corridors, the lights flickering faintly in the recycled air. People went about their business, traders shouting over prices, children running through the side halls. None of them knew what was about to happen. None of them had seen what Elias had seen in the pod survivor's eyes. That man had looked into fire and carried the sight of death back with him. At the command deck, Lieutenant Kara Wren was waiting with a grim face. The pod's logs are damaged, but our techs managed to pull some fragments. She showed him the shaky video feed, broken by static. The image of Colony Ardent appeared, its surface glowing red. Skies full of flames, cities split open. Then shadows in orbit, huge shapes moving like predators in the dark. Alien warships, dozens at least, maybe hundreds. The image cut to black. Elias forced himself to keep his face calm. The crew was watching him. Fear spread faster than any fire, and if he let it show now, panic would sweep the station before the enemy even arrived. Send a secure transmission to Earth Command, he said. High priority. Attach everything we have, the logs, the survivors' testimony, sensor data. They need to know. Kara hesitated. Sir, by the time they respond. I know, Elias said quietly. But we send it anyway. Earth must understand what's happening. The comms officer nodded and began encrypting the message. Elias stepped back to the wide tactical display. He could see the rim of the system, the faint trail of cloaked ships moving closer. They weren't rushing. They weren't hiding completely either. They were coming in slow, steady, like hunters closing in on prey that couldn't escape. Hours passed. Elias did not leave the deck. Reports came in from the outer sensors, more signatures appearing. The Drax weren't just sending scouts. This was a fleet. Dozens of ships had grown into hundreds. Their energy trails pulsed in strange patterns, sharp and irregular. Alien technology more advanced than human designs, but the meaning was clear enough. They had destroyed one colony. Now they were coming for Halcyon. At midnight station time, another alert sounded. Another small vessel had entered range. It was drifting, powerless. A rescue tug brought it in. When the hatch opened, only charred remains were inside. The pod's outer shell carried scars of energy blasts. One of the engineers whispered, "They were shooting even at escape pods." The words made the whole bay colder. Elias returned to his office, sitting in the dark with only the glow of the dying star outside the window. His thoughts turned to Earth. He imagined the great blue oceans, the forests, the families who still believed the galaxy could be shared with neighbors. Would they still believe it when they saw this? Would they finally understand that humanity's survival meant standing against predators who did not respect life? The door chimed and Kara stepped in again. Her face was pale. "Sir." Long-range sensors picked up a signal. Elias turned sharply. "Human." She shook her head. "No, Drax. It's a broadcast." She placed the pad on his desk. The message played. A cold alien voice filled the room, sharp and cruel, speaking in rough translated words. Humans spread like disease. You were warned to stay within your sun. You defy us. Now you burn. The colony is gone. Your station will be next. Run if you wish. It will not matter. The transmission ended with a screech that made the speakers crackle. Kara swallowed hard. They're taunting us. Elias stared at the empty screen. No, he said softly. They're testing us. They want to see if we'll break before they arrive. He stood and walked back to the observation deck. From here, he could see the freighters docking, lights glowing, families disembarking, children tugging at their parents' hands. Innocent lives. Thousands of them. They trusted Halcyon to keep them safe. The station was not built for war. It was a hub, a trade link, a meeting place for dozens of species. But right now, it stood as the only human stronghold between Earth and the Drax fleets. If Halcyon fell, the path to the inner colonies would be wide open. Elias placed his hand on the glass, staring into the starless dark where enemy ships were waiting. He thought of the survivors' words again, the voice broken by blood. They're coming for you next. He whispered under his breath, then let them come. But inside he felt the cold truth. Earth's fleet was months away, scattered and unprepared. Reinforcements would not reach Halcyon in time. The station and its people would have to face the storm alone. Just then, the main alarm blared across the decks. Red lights flashed, sirens screamed. The comms officer's voice rang out, strained with fear. Commander, multiple Drax warships have dropped out of warp at the system's edge. Estimate: 60 ships and more incoming. The room seemed to stop for a heartbeat. Every crew member staring at the display as the alien signatures filled the board. Halcyon was no longer waiting for ghosts. The wolves had arrived. And Elias Ward knew the real battle was only beginning. The alarms kept ringing through Station Halcyon, their wail cutting through every corridor. On the command deck, Commander Elias Ward stood still, his eyes locked on the tactical display. Alien warships, 60 at first, now 80, each one burning brighter on the sensors as they approached. The crew waited for him to speak. Fear was heavy in the air, but if Elias faltered now, the whole station would collapse into panic. Lock down the station, he ordered at last. His voice was steady, carrying over the alarms. Shut civilian docks. Evacuate the outer rings. Get everyone into shelters and core levels. No exceptions. The officers moved at once, grateful for something to do. The command deck lit up with status reports. Elias felt his chest tighten as he thought of the thousands of families on Halcyon. Traders, workers, children. All of them had come here believing this station was safe. He knew now it was nothing more than a target. Earth Command answered his transmission 2 hours later. The hologram of Admiral Reyes filled the room, his uniform sharp but his eyes tired. He looked older than the last time Elias had seen him, his face carved with lines of long battles and endless decisions. We've reviewed the data, Reyes said, his voice grim. There's no doubt. It's the Drax. They've already erased Ardent. Now they're moving toward Halcyon. We need reinforcements, Elias replied, trying not to let desperation slip into his voice. We can't hold the station against a fleet of that size. Not with what we have. Reyes leaned closer, his expression dark. Listen to me, Elias. We don't have months to wait. Not anymore. If Halcyon falls, Earth itself becomes vulnerable. The Drax will come straight through. That means you have to hold, no matter the cost. The words hit like a hammer. Elias's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Hold with what? A handful of patrol craft and a station not built for war. Reyes's eyes burned. With everything. With everyone. I am authorizing full mobilization of the human fleet. Every warship, every reserve, every vessel that can carry weapons. Even civilian ships will be armed and sent to fight. But until they arrive, you are the wall. Do you understand? Elias felt the weight settle onto his shoulders. He had been a soldier all his life, but never had he been asked to carry the survival of his people on a single station. Still, he nodded. I understand. Reyes hesitated, then lowered his voice. Elias, the truth is, this is bigger than Halcyon. If we retreat now, humanity will never be safe again. The Dracs will smell weakness. They'll never stop hunting us. We either fight here and show them what humans are, or we die later, one colony at a time. The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving Elias in silence. Around him, the command deck buzzed with hurried voices, the crew working to fortify what little defenses Halcyon had. Lieutenant Kara approached, her eyes wide. Commander, was that true? Earth is mobilizing the entire fleet. Elias gave a short nod. Every ship, every last one. Kara let out a slow breath, a mix of fear and awe. That's never been done before. No, Elias said, because until now, we never had enemies who wanted us erased. Hours passed in a blur. Halcyon's workers stripped cargo haulers and mining ships, bolting plasma turrets onto their hulls. Patrol frigates were armed with improvised missile racks. Even old shuttles were fitted with explosives, readied for ramming runs if it came to that. The station's engineers rerouted power grids, feeding more energy into the defense cannons. Every corridor filled with people carrying crates of weapons, armor, and supplies. Elias walked through the hangars, watching mechanics work with frantic speed. He saw a boy no older than 17 carrying crates twice his size, sweat pouring down his face. He saw mothers holding their children close, whispering promises they might not keep. He saw old men, too frail to fight, sharpening tools into blades just to feel useful. They were not soldiers, but they were human, and that would have to be enough. When he returned to the command deck, Kara rushed to him. Commander, the Drax fleet has stopped at the rim. They're not advancing yet. Elias frowned. Why not? They're waiting, she said softly, for reinforcements. The tactical display confirmed it. More energy signatures bloomed at the edge of the system. Dozens more warships. Hundreds. The Drax weren't here just to destroy Halcyon. They meant to crush humanity's will in one decisive strike. Elias felt a chill, but he forced himself to speak clearly. Then we won't wait for them to choose the time. We'll make our own stand. Kara stared. You mean, take the fight to them? They expect us to hide behind these walls, Elias said. They think humans will cower until they're ready to kill us. But we'll show them something else. We'll strike first. For a moment, the deck was silent. Officers exchanged glances, fear and disbelief mixing in their eyes. But then one by one, they nodded. If humanity was to survive, they could not wait to be slaughtered. Elias leaned over the console, his voice calm, hard as steel. Send the order. Every ship, every fighter, every cannon. We strike at dawn station time. We hit them before they hit us. The crew moved at once, carrying his words through the comms, turning them into orders that spread across Halcyon. The entire station stirred with tense purpose. Men and women readied themselves for the impossible. Elias stood once more before the wide glass of the observation deck, staring into the dark. Somewhere beyond those stars, thousands of alien eyes were watching, certain of their victory. But they had forgotten what it meant to corner humanity. Humans had been prey once, long ago, but they had learned how to become predators too. The alarms shifted to a new tone. The Drax ships had begun to move again, and the first great clash was only hours away. The station ticked toward dawn's cycle. Though out in the void there was no sunrise, only the endless dark. On Halcyon, silence filled the hangars and corridors as crews made final checks. Thousands of men and women stood ready, some gripping rifles, others strapped into fighter cockpits. Civilians who had never thought of themselves as soldiers now wore patched armor and carried weapons cobbled together in the workshops. They all waited for Commander Elias Ward's signal. From the observation deck, the alien fleet looked like a swarm of black shapes against the stars, their energy trails burning faintly. More than 100 warships had gathered, sleek and sharp, glowing with strange green lights that pulsed like living things. The Drax hadn't fired yet. They moved closer, slow and confident, certain that Halcyon would crumble once the first shots were fired. Elias stood at the center of the command deck, his hands gripping the railing. His voice carried steady and calm through the comms. All ships, all fighters, prepare for launch. This is not about one station. This is about every human life that will come after us. Today we show them who we are. The words rolled through the comm channels, reaching pilots and crews across the station. In the hangar bays, fighter engines roared to life, their blue flames cutting through the shadows. Cargo haulers, usually built to move or in supplies, now sat heavy with bolted weapons and explosives. Patrol frigates formed tight lines, ready to escort the smaller ships. Kararin stood at the tactical console, her young face set with determination. Commander, all ships are in formation. Fighters ready for first strike. Elias nodded. Then we begin. The order was given, and the hangar doors slid open. A wave of human fighters surged into the void, hundreds of them moving as one, followed by frigates and armed freighters. The station's defense cannons turned outward, locking on to distant targets. For a brief second, there was quiet, like the breath before a storm. Then Halcyon struck first. Missiles lit up the darkness, streaking across the gulf toward the alien fleet. Plasma bolts from the station's cannons followed, slamming into the lead Drax ships. Explosions blossomed like stars being born. The aliens had not expected the humans to fire first. Their neat formation staggered as ships peeled away, scrambling to respond. The Drax returned fire, beams of searing energy cutting through space. A line of human fighters vanished in an instant, torn apart by alien weapons. One cargo ship exploded in a burst of orange flame, scattering wreckage across the void. The human fleet pressed forward anyway. Elias's voice rang through the comms. Keep moving. Hit them hard. Do not let them regroup. Human tactics were unlike anything the Drax had seen before. Damaged freighters charged forward instead of retreating, ramming into alien cruisers and detonating their fuel cells in suicidal strikes. Fighters darted in swarms, attacking from odd angles, overwhelming enemy defenses with sheer numbers. Patrol ships looped around to flank, hammering the larger warships with concentrated fire. On the tactical display, Kara called out, "Enemy formation breaking. We've taken out 7 warships." Elias watched, his jaw tight. But for every alien ship destroyed, humans paid a price. Frigates burned, fighters winked out by the dozens. Still, the line held. Still, the humans kept pushing. Out in the void, one freighter packed with mining explosives broke through enemy fire and slammed directly into a Drax destroyer. The explosion lit the darkness brighter than a sun, tearing both ships apart. The command deck cheered, the sound raw and desperate. But the aliens were adapting. New formations appeared, sleek vessels sweeping forward with their heavier cannons. A beam of white fire cut through 3 human frigates in a single sweep. Another blast struck Halcyon's outer ring, tearing away a section of habitat modules. The whole station shook. Alarms blared. Kara's hands flew across her console. "Commander, the outer ring is gone. Casualty reports are climbing fast." Elias steadied himself against the rail. His heart clenched, but his voice stayed calm. "Seal off the damaged section. Keep firing. Every minute we hold them here, Earth has 1 more minute to prepare." The human fleet tightened around the station, pressing back against the alien advance. Drax warships began to falter, their commanders shocked by the sheer recklessness of human tactics. Aliens expected retreats, careful maneuvers, surrender when losses grew too high. But the humans never broke. They fought like creatures who would burn their own flesh if it meant wounding their enemy. Elias could feel the tide shifting. For the first time, the Drax began to hesitate. Their lines wavered. Kara looked up, her eyes wide. "Commander, they're pulling back." On the display, Elias saw it too. Several alien ships were retreating to the rim, regrouping. It wasn't defeat, not yet, but it was hesitation. The Drax had expected to crush Halcyon in one strike. Instead, they were facing resistance unlike anything they had prepared for. The deck filled with cheers, but Elias raised a hand for silence. Don't celebrate yet. They're not finished. This was only the first wave. As if to prove his words, a new reading appeared on the sensors. Larger energy signatures, dozens more. The Drax reinforcements were arriving. The command deck went quiet again. Kara whispered, "How many?" Elias stared at the display. The numbers climbed higher. 100 more ships, then 200, then 300. A full armada pushing into the system, more than Halcyon had ever faced in its history. He drew in a slow breath. The first strike had worked. They had shown the aliens that humans would not bow, that they would strike back with everything they had. But now the true battle was coming. Elias gripped the railing tighter, his voice carrying across the station once more. All ships, reform lines, reload weapons. Every fighter, every frigate, every hand able to fight, stand ready. The Drax Armada is here. The stars outside filled with alien fire. The second wave had begun. The second wave came like a storm. The Drax Armada poured into the system, their ships blotting out the stars, their energy trails flooding the tactical display until the whole screen burned red. The first wave had been meant to test Halcyon's strength. This one was meant to erase it completely. On the command deck, every officer went silent as the numbers climbed. 300 ships became 400, then 500. Sleek destroyers, massive carriers, warships glowing with alien firepower far beyond anything Halcyon was built to resist. The sight was crushing, but Elias Ward stood tall, his hands tight on the railing, his face calm for all to see. He knew that if his fear showed, the station's courage would crumble with it. "All ships, hold formation," he said, his voice steady. "We've made them bleed once. We'll do it again." The alien fleet advanced, and the void erupted in fire. Drax cannons sent out beams of energy that carved through the dark like blades of light. The first volley struck hard, slicing 2 human frigates into debris and setting another freighter ablaze. The shock rippled through the fleet, but they did not scatter. They answered at once, hundreds of human missiles streaking across the Gulf, plasma bolts lighting up the void. Several alien cruisers burst apart, their burning wreckage spinning into the dark. Inside the hangars, pilots strapped themselves in with grim determination. Young men and women who had never thought of themselves as warriors now launched into the black sky in converted mining shuttles, their ships shaking under the strain. They carried nothing but improvised weapons and raw courage, yet they flew straight into alien fire. From his command chair, Elias gave orders with calm precision. Squadron 3, swing wide to the left. Patrols, close the gap on Sector 9. Station cannons, focus fire on that destroyer. His words flowed without pause, steady as iron. But no command could hide the truth. Human ships were dying. A dozen fighters winked out at once, caught in a single sweep of alien fire. A corvette overloaded and exploded, scattering its crew into the void. The losses hurt, but the humans never broke. For every ship destroyed, another surged forward to take its place. One freighter, engines burning, plowed through a line of Drax fighters before detonating its mining charges directly against an alien carrier. The blast shook the stars, tearing the massive ship open from bow to stern. On the command deck, Kara gasped, her eyes wide. They did it! The carrier's gone. The crew erupted in cheers, brief but fierce, before Elias raised a hand. Honor their sacrifice by holding the line. Keep firing. The battle raged on, chaos and fury twisting through the void. Alien ships were sleeker, faster, stronger, but the humans fought like no enemy they had ever faced. Where most species would retreat in the face of overwhelming power, humans pressed forward. Wounded ships rammed into alien destroyers. Fighters with no ammunition still darted into enemy formations, drawing fire so their comrades could strike. The Drax commanders had expected victory in minutes. Instead, they were dragged into a brawl that grew bloodier with every second. Their formations broke under the swarm of desperate human attacks. Still, the cost was terrible. The station shook as more blasts tore into its armor. Entire sections went dark. Casualty reports streamed across the consoles. Kara's voice cracked as she read them. Outer dock destroyed. Habitat Block 7 is gone. Thousands dead. Elias closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He could see their faces, the families who had trusted Halcyon. The weight of command pressed hard, but when he opened his eyes, his voice was cold and strong. We fight for them. Every one of them. Another alarm blared. A massive alien ship, larger than anything yet seen, emerged at the rim. The silhouette was monstrous, bristling with weapons. Kara's face went pale. Commander! That's their flagship. The alien flagship advanced, its guns blazing. Beams of energy slammed into the human line, ripping through frigates and scattering fighters. The display filled with red markers, human ships blinking out by the dozens. For a moment, it looked as if the line would break. Elias leaned forward. His voice cut through the chaos. Order every damaged ship to charge. If they can't hold, they'll take someone with them. The order spread, and across the void, crippled ships lit their engines and hurled themselves into the enemy. Explosions erupted as freighters rammed into alien cruisers, as corvettes detonated their cores against destroyers. The battlefield burned, wreckage spinning in every direction. Kara turned to Elias, her voice breaking. We can't win this, sir. Not like this. Elias's jaw tightened. We don't need to win. We just need to hold until Earth's fleet arrives. Every second we live, they're closer. The alien flagship loomed larger, its weapons tearing through everything before it. The human line bent under its assault. But still they fought. Still they refused to break. On the display, Elias watched as one last freighter, its hull torn open, engines sputtering, made its way straight toward the flagship. Its captain's voice came over the calm and steady. For Ardent. For Earth. The ship vanished in a blaze that lit up half the battlefield, tearing open the side of the massive alien vessel. The flagship staggered, its lights flickering. For the first time, the Drax formation faltered. The command deck fell silent, every eye on Elias. He gripped the rail, his heart pounding, and gave the only order left. Press the attack. Show them humans don't break. Out in the dark, the battered fleet surged forward once more, bloodied but unbowed. A tide of fire and steel crashing against an enemy that had never known such defiance. The battle was far from over, but the Drax had already learned one truth. They had not come to erase prey. They had awakened predators. The battlefield burned on every screen. The alien flagship still loomed, though half its hull was torn apart by the freighter's sacrifice. The human fleet was scattered, ships limping, fighters nearly out of fuel, but they still fought. Halcyon itself shook with each impact as enemy fire struck the station. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the air smelled of smoke from burning circuits. Commander Elias Ward stood at the center of it all, his eyes fixed on the chaos. He knew the truth: Halcyon could not survive much longer. Commander, shields are down on the north sector, Kara shouted, her voice breaking with strain. We can't take another barrage like that. Elias looked around at his crew. They were tired, bleeding, frightened, yet none of them had abandoned their posts. They had given everything, and still the enemy came. He felt the weight of a decision pressing against him, one he had thought about since the beginning. A desperate move, one chance left. He leaned close to Kara. Prep the core. Her head snapped up. The reactor? You don't mean? I do, Elias said firmly. If they want Halcyon, then we make it a weapon. For a moment, Kara just stared at him, her face pale. Then she nodded. Orders were relayed across engineering. Down below, teams moved quickly, rerouting power, overriding safeties, unlocking systems that had never been meant to open. Halcyon's heart, the massive reactor at its core, began to hum louder and louder. On the sensors, the alien fleet kept pressing closer. Hundreds of ships surrounded the station now, firing relentlessly, their green beams cutting through human ships like paper. The humans answered with everything they had left. Fighters with no missiles rammed into enemy hulls. Damaged frigates charged forward, detonating their engines in brilliant flashes. The battlefield became a graveyard, wreckage drifting everywhere, but the aliens were bleeding too. Dozens of their warships had already fallen, and the flagship limped through space with half its weapons gone. Kara's hands shook as she read the reports. Core buildup is starting. Commander, once we hit overload, there's no turning back. The station will go up like a sun. Elias nodded. That's the point. He stood tall, his voice carrying across the comm channels to every ship and fighter still holding the line. This is Commander Ward. You've fought with everything you had. You've shown them what it means to face humanity. Now we finish it. Damaged ships, draw them in closer. Fighters, clear us a path. When Halcyon goes, I want every Drax vessel caught in the fire. His words spread through the fleet, steady and calm, and for a moment, even in the middle of chaos, there was silence. Then the voices of men and women filled the comms, short and sharp. For Earth. For Ardent. For our families. The human fleet obeyed. Wounded ships pulled back toward the station, luring the Drax closer. The aliens, seeing weakness, pressed eagerly forward. They thought victory was near, that Halcyon was finally breaking. They did not realize the trap that had been set. The reactor's hum grew into a roar, vibrations shaking the entire station. Sparks flew from the consoles as systems overloaded. Kara's face was slick with sweat as she called out, Core at 70%, 80, 90. Outside, the aliens drew closer and closer. The flagship moved into position, its guns preparing to fire on the crippled station. Drax commanders must have believed this was the killing blow, the moment they crushed humanity's last defense. Elias stood tall, his voice calm even as the deck shook beneath him. All ships, pull clear. Fighters, disengage. Now. The human ships peeled away, scattering back, just far enough to escape the blast radius. The alien fleet moved right into the trap, their ships circling Halcyon, their weapons tearing at its hull. Kara looked up, her eyes wide. Core at critical, Commander. 10 seconds. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the voices lost at Ardent, the children who had screamed as fire rained from the sky. He thought of the survivor who had whispered, "They're coming for you next." And he thought of Earth, still waiting, still unprepared, depending on him to buy them time. He opened his eyes. Do it. Kara hit the final command. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Halcyon erupted. The reactor collapsed in on itself and then exploded outward in a blinding wave of energy. The station became a sun, a storm of white fire that expanded in every direction. Alien warships caught in its reach were ripped apart instantly, their sleek hulls torn to molten shards. The flagship was engulfed, its massive frame shattering as the blast tore through it. The shockwave hurled wreckage across the system, burning everything it touched. The humans watched from their ships, stunned into silence, as Halcyon's light filled the void. The station was gone, but so was half the Drax armada. Where once hundreds of alien ships had surrounded them, now only scattered survivors remained, broken and burning. Kara's voice cracked through the calm. It worked. Commander. It worked. Elias stood silent for a long moment. The sacrifice was heavy, almost unbearable. The station he had sworn to protect was gone, along with thousands of souls who hadn't lived to see the victory. But the Drax had been broken, and Earth had gained time. He spoke at last, his voice low but steady. Signal Earth. Tell them Halcyon has fallen, but the enemy has paid dearly. Tell them humanity is not finished. Tell them we're just getting started. The surviving ships drifted through the wreckage, their crews shaken, their eyes on the burning remains of what had been their home. They had turned despair into a weapon. They had shown the Drax the price of underestimating humanity. But as Elias stared into the dark, he saw new signatures forming at the edge of the system. More alien ships were coming. The battle was far from over. The wreckage of Station Halcyon still glowed like an open wound in space, burning pieces drifting slowly into the dark. Human ships floated among the ruins, battered, scarred, but still alive. The survivors whispered over comms, their voices filled with both grief and defiance. They had lost their home, but they had broken the enemy's teeth in the process. Half the Drax armada was gone, destroyed in the blast. Yet Elias Ward knew it was not the end. New signatures were already blooming on the sensors. More ships, more enemies. The Drax would not stop until they had finished what they started. Kara's voice was tight as she called out from her console. Commander, fresh contacts. Hundreds more. They'll be here in minutes. Elias stared at the glowing red markers spreading across the display. They were outnumbered 10-1 now, and without the station's guns, the survivors had little left to give. Still, the human fleet tightened its line, battered frigates and armed freighters falling into place like soldiers bracing for a last stand. No one retreated. Not a single ship tried to flee. He opened the comms to all channels. To every human ship, you've fought with courage greater than any commander could ask for. You've shown the enemy who we are. If this is our last stand, then let it be one the galaxy never forgets. No surrender. No retreat. We hold. The comms filled with voices, ragged and fierce. Pilots, engineers, civilians, soldiers, men and women all shouting the same thing. For Earth, for Halcyon, for humanity. The Drax fleet poured in, their weapons glowing, their formations stretching across the void like a wall of fire. The humans surged forward to meet them, broken ships launching one last wave of missiles, fighters darting into enemy fire without hesitation. The void erupted again, beams slicing through the dark, explosions shaking the stars. Elias stood at his post, giving orders calmly, though inside he knew this was the end. They could not survive another wave this size. Then Kara gasped, her eyes wide on the sensors. Commander, something's coming in behind them. Thousands of contacts, human signatures. Elias froze. He stared at the display as the numbers climbed higher. Hundreds became thousands. Thousands became hundreds of thousands. Blue markers filled the screen, pushing into the system from hyperspace. A tide of ships, vast and unstoppable. Kara's voice broke into a sob of relief. It's Earth's fleet. They're here. The survivors on comms erupted into cheers as the impossible became real. Earth had done what no one believed it could. It had mobilized everything. Freighters, warships, dreadnoughts, carriers, fighters. 700,000 ships pouring out of hyperspace like a tidal wave of steel and fire. Elias felt his throat tighten. For the first time in days, hope surged in his chest. He opened the channel to the incoming fleet. The image of Admiral Reyes appeared, his face grim but his eyes blazing with fire. Elias, he said, you held the line. Now we finish it. The battlefield turned. The human armada moved as one, formations spreading across the stars with flawless precision. Alien commanders who had expected a quick kill now found themselves surrounded. Everywhere they turned, human ships closed in, pouring out fire with relentless fury. Numbers the galaxy had never seen before thundered through the void. The Drax flagship tried to rally its fleet, its weapons blazing, but it was crushed under a storm of missiles and plasma bolts. Smaller alien cruisers broke formation and tried to flee, only to be hunted down by swarms of fighters. The human fleet advanced like a wall of fire, pushing the Drax back, ripping apart everything in their path. On his command deck, Elias watched with steady eyes. Halcyon was gone, but its sacrifice had bought the time Earth needed. And now vengeance had arrived. Hours turned into days as the battle raged across the system. The Drax fought with desperation, but their confidence was broken. Their fleets, once sleek and untouchable, were torn apart by human persistence. Every time they destroyed one ship, 10 more came. The humans never stopped, never slowed, never let the enemy breathe. At last silence fell. The final alien ship flickered on the display, its engines failing, its weapons silent. Then it too was gone, consumed by fire. The system lay quiet, filled only with drifting wreckage and the glow of burning debris. Elias stood at the window, staring at the ruins of Halcyon. His heart ached for those who had died, but pride burned in him too. They had proven the truth. Humans were not prey. They were not weak settlers to be erased. They were predators who would fight until the last breath, and they would never forgive genocide. Admiral Reyes's voice came through the comms, carried to every ship. Let this be the lesson. Humanity will never bow. Any who strike at us will face the same fate. The Dracs thought they could end us, but tonight, they have ended themselves. Across the fleet, cheers rose. Men and women shouted through tears and laughter. Their voices carried across the stars. They had survived. They had won. Elias closed his eyes, hearing the echoes of the fallen, seeing the faces of those lost on Halcyon. He whispered quietly to himself, "We held. The galaxy would never be the same again." Where once humans had been underestimated, dismissed as young and fragile, now every world would remember Halcyon, and the day 700,000 ships came to war. It was the birth of something new. Humanity had stepped into the stars not as wanderers, not as settlers, but as a force no one could ignore. The Dracs were finished, and the age of human dominance had just begun.